right, so let's talk about the DNS server on Windows. Once you have a Windows machine, a server machine running, for example, on Azure or VMware or however you've done it, once you have a version, any version of Windows Server would do, by the way, it doesn't have to be the latest. All right, then you can put on Wireshark, and now you can do an NS lookup. This is using an external server, and you can find your IP address, and then you have to assign a static IP address to your machine. You shouldn't have a dynamic IP address on a DNS server, and it will harass you if you try to do that. So you do ipconfig and find your IP address, and then set it statically here, and then you set your DNS server to 127.0.0.1, which is loopback. Now this means your machine will no longer look somewhere else for DNS records, and that means you will not have any DNS service at this point. When you try to do a lookup, it will look on its own server and it won't find anything because this machine is not yet running a DNS server. So you've lost internet connection essentially, temporarily. And now you can add the role. You go to add roles and features here in the Server Manager, and then you just click through the steps and add DNS Server to it. And the default DNS server settings will do. That'll make it a standard recursive DNS server. And after that, you'll be able to do resolution. One thing that is very strange about a Microsoft DNS server is, like everything Microsoft makes, it's incredibly slow and inefficient. So we might even have to try 2 or 3 times before it will succeed in resolving the domain. But now you will be able to resolve domains. And if you look in Wireshark, you can see how it does it. If you filter for DNS and resolve a domain you haven't resolved previously, then you'll see a series of queries here. And one thing that's interesting is it will start with a query that will go to various servers, and one of them is a DNS server on the internet. Now, you did not configure any DNS servers when you specified it. You didn't tell it your Comcast server or anything else. So how did it find that? And the answer is the software has root hints built into it, and you can see them in DNS Manager. If you right-click your server and go to Properties in DNS Manager, you will now see a tab called Root Hints. It has built into it some addresses to get you started, which will get you to the root servers, and then it can look for top-level domains and bottom domains. So that has to be built into here. So this is sort of the analogy of glue records for the client. Your software has to know some domains just to get, some addresses just to get you started. And that's how it works. All right, so now you can use an authoritative server. You can find ccsf.edu's authoritative server, and that you will find is ns3.ccsf.edu. That's our authoritative server. So now you can do a resolution of ccsf.edu from the authoritative server. And when you do it, it will not say non-authoritative data. This other one did say non-authoritative answer. That's how Windows works. The Windows NS lookup tool, if you get DNS resolution from the non-authoritative server, it tells you that. If you get it from the authoritative server, it doesn't tell you that. So that's how you can tell. All right. And so then you can also run a Wireshark capture and run a reverse lookup. Now, if you do a reverse lookup on a private domain, a private IP address like 192.168, that should not work because that cannot be assigned a public domain. This is one of the many flaws with Microsoft's DNS implementation. If this is a stupid query, looking for a public IP domain name tied to a private address makes no sense, and your machine should just say, no, there is no such thing. But in fact, on Windows, it sends a whole bunch of queries off to the internet hunting for that nonsensical reverse record that is not there. And these are such a problem. Windows machines do this typically every time they boot up. They look for private addresses, reverse it on the internet, and so this creates a flood of traffic which sort of causes denial of service problems on the internet, and there's a whole bunch of special servers just to get rid of this junk. It is one of the many rude things about Microsoft. Microsoft has always been a bad citizen of the internet. And especially in the early days, like when they wrote Windows NT, they completely ignored the internet standards. They just did whatever they wanted because they said, we are the internet, we are the whole computing structure, we'll just do it our way. They also ignored HTML specifications and just made up tags that nobody else would use in their browser. They just were like a 900-pound gorilla. They just did anything they wanted, and they didn't think standards applied to them. They reformed later, but their DNS still has bizarre problems. So a polite thing to do in your DNS is to configure reverse lookup zones so your DNS server will not go hunting on the internet for stupid private addresses. And you can do it. It's just surprisingly difficult. If Microsoft was not nuts, this would be the default. These reverse zones should just be in the server in the first place, but you have to configure them one by one to prevent that junk traffic. So it's kind of silly, but it's a thing to learn, and it helps you understand DNS better. And then you can show, now if you try to do a dig for a reverse private address, Wireshark will not send any DNS queries off your network. It knows an internal answer to give you saying there's no domain name tied to those things. All right, anyway, there's a couple flags to find, but that's what you do setting up your Windows DNS server. And I think that's all I want to say about it. I'll just start answering questions. People are setting up their Azure machines and such. So I'll stop.